Okay, hello everyone. Am I audible enough? Okay. I hope this works the way I expect it to work. So, can you see the presentation right now in full screen? Yes. Okay, well, not so fast. So, welcome to the second ever Raku Conference, which is also my second ever Raku Conference. I pretty much started getting to know this language around the time of the first conference. That was like my first influence. And I gave this talk the title, The Good, the Bad, and the substitute whatever you associate Raku with. And then I noticed that The Ugly, the Bad, and the Good was the title of the first apocalypse of Perl 6 back in the day. So I made this subtitle. I really like this association. And this will be my kind of twisted apocalypse after 1 year in the community. So, yes, you might know me as Márton Polgár, as the author of this presentation, but also you can know me as Two Colors on GitHub or Nemokos on Discord or IRC usually. So that's all me. And I think this might be important because I'm not sure we will fit into time, but you can access me anywhere. So if we don't really have time for questions, then feel free to access me wherever, either here or on these places. So yeah, how it all started for me is that I needed a tool for scripting and automation, and I soon realized that shell, or at least POSIX shell, is not really for me, especially knowing languages like Python. But Python also had certain problems, at least for me. It was a bit cumbersome because command line arguments is one thing to handle, then environmental variables is another different thing to handle. Interacting with shell, which also has some useful utilities that I knew, is another problem. So all of these things are solvable, but it really feels like writing boilerplate when you want to use Python for scripting. And when you want to write 5-liners, this can get annoying really soon. So I started looking around. I definitely had to check out Awk, but soon I realized this is absolutely not for this task. And then I arrived to the conclusion that Perl seems like a language that could work. But by this time, I already heard about Raku a couple of times. So I thought, why not dig deep into it? The promise was that the good things are kept and there's additional goodies. So that's how I got going. And let's enter the first phase. So this is really a euphoric phase, I would say, at least for my experience. This was really euphoric because, yeah, my essential problems got solved really nicely with command line interface and going with shell calls. The community, I also heard about the community, and it is indeed something to be proud of, I would say. You can reach out to many of core members on IRC via Discord as well, because there is an integration using a bot written in Raku. So it's all very nice. Then I listed some other things that I probably cannot really elaborate on. Maybe the operator is interesting because I only listed 4, but those are meta operators. So these are only operators that are applied with some additional operator to make a concrete operator. And also, I think one that I really like is how map can be used like a for. So it can be breaks from, it can return 0 value for an item, it can return multiple values for an item. So it's really insanely powerful. And yeah, the rest is just something that you will find pretty soon on the way. First example with the CLI. So yeah, for the main subroutine, if you write parameters, you will get basically auto-generated command line argument parsing. There was a great presentation about this like 5 years ago, still in the Perl 6 era, but it's still very relevant today. So I can only advise it. And yes, there is an example code that I put here from my actual script. So using multiple dispatch, this really has everything going on. So type constraints, default values, named arguments, and additional comments to help the user. And here you can see what you get from this. So if you had these subroutine signatures, if you try to run your script, you get all of this for free. So really, it's not extra effort. This is really nice every time you need to write something that you might want to run later or might want to show anyone else. Another did you know part, like in shell, you can embed like shell calls and take the standard output of it using the QX quoting. There are several different types of quoting. I've used quite a couple in this little example. But yes, this can be nice when you don't want to reinvent GCC preprocessor or get to know something about the file using this file program with a command line interface. Probably there are more clever ways to do this, but I think it's a good illustration of what we have here. And there are also other ways to invoke shell stuff for more sophisticated things, especially pros async, where you can handle the standard out as you get it. So sometimes that can also be handy rather than hanging on generating all the text as one big string. And one more from this era, the operators. So last year on this conference, Daniel Sockwell held a really good presentation about C++ built-in algorithms implemented in Raku. That's definitely a must watch. And I have code example here that I basically just invented for this talk. So I don't think we really need to go through all of this. Basically what it does, it creates a table that respects column lengths with some casual meta stuff and hyper operators thrown around. And this is the output. If this was a 2-dimensional table, and it really respects the length of the columns. Then I entered my second phase, which I named the elegance crippled. Soon you will get to know why. So this is about the time when I actually tried to write Raku code for myself. and try to learn stuff on my own. I can really advise the advent of code and the weekly challenge as well, the Perl and the Raku weekly challenge, but one can participate in any other language as well. So my problems, which are definitely quite personal problems, but this is my story after all. So at this time, I still regularly failed to write proper Raku code. It just wouldn't run. I wouldn't understand the error. So I'm still struggling a lot after a couple of months, but I already know how much better it could be solved. So I already don't accept the solutions that I could just port from other languages that I already know. So this was also a good thing and a bad thing, because I think this really helped me, this attitude to develop as soon as possible, but it also can make you feel burned out. So we will return to that. There is a piece of code from this era, straight from advent of code. So one can see that quite a lot is going on here with this zip compare, reduction, like really using everything that I've ever heard of in Raku, and trying to find a way around lists with capture to put them into a bag. So yeah, I think you can get the feeling behind this piece of code. And then a rather stressful period came for me regarding my Raku experience. That's why I put the moth instead of camellia. So this already had its signs around advent of code, but it really peaked around spring this year. So I was encouraged to open issues if something doesn't seem all right. This is all fine, but when you really start digging into issues, it can also be like rather painful for everyone. So I don't say don't open issues. It's really good. There can be ways out, but just try to not obsess over them. So also, I don't want to get into deep details, but I will definitely leave this here. The issue I opened for the code of conduct update, also around the time when the war began in Ukraine. So honestly, I'm not the kind of person who wouldn't carelessly offend other people. So I'm actually a bit worried when I have this impression that people feeling offended get the free calls everywhere. This is not just Raku specific. I'm worried about the possible consequences of this. And yes, the fact that I'm here is that I'm willing to take this risk. I want to see how it will turn out. Only time will tell. And then there are other things, the inconveniences. So things that we don't like to talk about, but I feel, confident about to say it regardless. So Raku is a very complex language, not an easy start, in the sense that if you are a completionist, you will never be done with Raku. And yes, this could lead to my elegance cripple. Then also that there isn't a single source of truth for Raku. What I mean here is that there is no such written standard as for C, for example. There isn't a know-it-all person, for example, because the language is just too big. And the roast actually isn't always comprehensive. This is the test suite that basically defines the standard, but sometimes it's lacking, and sometimes we can only figure whether something should work or not. Then, yes, there are things that just don't work as you would expect if you are coming from C, Java, JavaScript, Pascal, Python, Erlang, and then I named quite a couple of languages that I've come across. For example, pattern matching-ish behavior isn't quite the same, to name one. And yes, then here it is, this quote, which is said to be coming from Larry Wall. In Perl 6, we decided it would be better to fix the language than fix the user. And my doubts at times about this statement. So yeah, this is, did you know the evil version? Did you know that combining these meta operators won't give you a proper result exactly because they are interpreted as meta operators, not operators, even though X and Z exist as operators as well. And we don't really know whether they should. There are various signs. Did you know that this expression, 3 is less than 5, and the minimum of this or 2 is actually true because I deliberately read it wrong. Actually, min has, no, I read it right actually. So min has lower precedence than the less than sign. So true min 2 is true, but like why? Then the brackets don't actually terminate blocks without a line break. So something like automatic semicolon insertion in JavaScript, which makes this fail. So I put a block inside the map and then say something. So this will fail because the statement terminates at the end of map, because that's a block terminator and you cannot start a statement with and then. So yeah, indeed, oops. Did you know that div and mod fail instead of coercing to int, while, for example, GCD and LCM do coerce, everything else coerces, only this two doesn't. And like, again, we don't really know why. It could be fixed given the intentions, but we don't really know if this is some kind of intended behavior or not. Did you know that this is a parse error? So you cannot arrow return a negative integer constant. And then there is one which turns out to be happy because, yeah, as I showed that code, I messed around to make lists hashable by turning them into captures. But now they can be put into bags if you are a bit smarter than I was. So Lismot brought us the future. Value list is coming to the language, and also there are modules, so you can add them to your existing code, and then you have hashable, really constant lists. And yes, one last one on the fix the user or fix the language. Like I would say, if you think that this worked and you would expect this swapping to work and you get this really strange thing going on here. Or you have seen this work and you get some different semantics for not equal. Or you see that you assign nil, you eventually doesn't get nil, but if you don't assign nil, but well, a failure technically, then you do get nil. So if you see these things and you think they are weird, and you ask, like I ask, for example, why they work this way, it doesn't mean that I'm curious about the implementation. It means that I find it inconsistent. I find it unintuitive. And even if it cannot be changed, I want it to be addressed from a user perspective and not implementation-wise, because eventually I will be inclined to say that the implementation is also wrong then. So yes, this was another one. And we are reaching our current stage, or at least my personal current stage, finding inner peace. So the butterfly can finally return. So this was for, well, education in Hungary, high school education. So I was making tutorials for this. I still am every now and then. Actually, I started learning Python for this Matura exam at the end of high school. And then I started making tutorials. And last time I was really thinking, if I could use Raku or anyone else could use Raku, like, wow, now that would be awesome. Like even compared to Python, like one-liner example solutions, and that gives you 30% of your points. So like that would be really insane. And really that Raku could be, despite all I've said, a really good language with assistance to teach. The ecosystem is promising. We will return to that tomorrow. There is a continuous sense of improvement. So again, referring to the community and the possible resolutions of issues. Then there is one more. This is also required for my inner peace, but it's also like a shout out to everyone to make a really good and comprehensive presentation about containers. They are really essential, and we really need to get more of that, because I think you can spend a lot of time not understanding them, and it can give you a lot of headaches. It would be really good to have very comprehensive materials for containers in Raku, not to Docker. And yeah, of course, I also found even more operators on the way. That always makes me happy. So eventually we are reaching to the finishing point where I get to call my questions. So a couple of questions here. So yeah, first of all, education versus this catch-22 that it's not known, that's where it's not taught, that's where it's not known. So yes, how to break out of this. Then performance. Performance is still a very big question. It still needs to find ways to compete with other scripting languages. Also think about the advantages that we have and how much competitors are catching up in those things that we are better at regarding features, accessibility, the community. And also one last one to ponder upon is like the community question itself, somewhat related to the code of conduct, whether Raku is more of a manifestation of people with certain views, or people with certain views come closer to Raku, like what was first, the chicken or the egg? What is our main priority? And I think these are all questions that are still very much open. And this is where I would like to thank your attention. I don't know how we are with the time. I think it's all right-ish. Not sure if we really have time for immediate questions. I couldn't read the chat in the meantime, sorry for that. So thank you for watching, and I'm at your disposal.
Hi, Martin. It's Steve Rowe here. Thank you very much for a great talk. I really enjoyed it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay. I just wanted to tell you, I was I went over the top on the community on the GitHub yesterday, and I have put an apology in there. So I don't mean to stop the conversation, and I always learn something when I see your posts. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. No
We're all here to we're all learning. Actually, I think
done.
it's great. It's great to you know, to all try something, explore something new. So it's cool.
Hi, Martin. This is Anton. So did you become better at learning new languages, programming languages, after learning Raku, or worse?
Well, this is actually a good question. You know, my own personal catch is that since I mostly use Raku for these couple of liners, I really know a lot about, well, for a 1-year-old in the community, I think I know quite a lot of the basics. So what can happen within a couple of lines. But for example, I basically know nothing of OOP in Raku. So there are still paradigms in Raku that I haven't really explored. But definitely, if I were to learn APL now, then I would probably have a head start.